One of the last places you'll find genuine freedom is wild mooring on the canals and rivers of England.
For the price of a Canal and River Trust licence, you can moor anywhere you like on the network.
That's over 2,000 miles of navigable canals and rivers. Add to that a further 2,000 miles or so of waterways not owned by the CRT, and there's plenty to see and do. Like wild mooring in places where cars can't get access, where there are fewer people, and where the only sound is nature.
Marley's still getting used to having the camera trained on him. Every time I put the camera near his face, he tries to lick it. As ever, the bird song along here is spectacular. We use this app called Marley, and I'm sure we've talked about it before, which identifies the song, so we know what birds are there. Then a question of trying to find them, trying to spot them. I was very excited to actually spot a blackcap the other day in the thornwood. But we've got the rest of today and all of tomorrow where we're going to be moored alongside wild mooring, and we hope that we might catch some interesting birds. Marley's going to help us, aren't you, Mars?
It takes us only minutes leaving the marina to be in rural countryside, and we've watched the canals change from winter to spring as we've passed through. But on this trip, we were aiming for a spot just 2 miles away.
So we're not going very far. In fact, it's even closer than I had remembered. Jamie's just reminded me where we are going. We've gone up and down here so often. I should remember everything in the order, but I don't. I just remember each place. I'm really crap at that. I lived in London all my life and still couldn't get from A to B after 50 years without being quite sure how everything joined up. I was pretty good on the underground, but that was about it. What do you think, Marley? It's going to be a nice day, isn't it?
Our destination is the Winding Hole, a wide section of the canal that not only allows large boats to turn round, but has a convenient bank to moor up on. There are no houses here, but half a mile as the crow flies northward lies the village of Fishlake. Mentioned in the Domesday Book census of 1086, it's home to a Grade 1 listed Norman church of national significance. Its clock chimes every quarter with bells dating back to the 1500s.
We're only about 2 miles out of Thorn, down the canal, and we're at what we call the Winding Hole. Now this is an area we've talked about before in previous episodes when we were discussing why it's called winding and not winding. And it's a place that we've passed many times as we go out onto the New Junction Canal. And every time we pass it, I keep saying to Liz, wouldn't it be great to stop off at this point? Because it really is just nature at its best.
We first came here in winter when it was cold and the trees were bare. But now it's spring and nature is bursting out all over the place. Look at the leaves and blossom unfurling. Each day everything is getting greener and brighter and denser. One of the most enchanting sights is a multitude of seeds drifting across the canal, some settling on the water. All day and night they swirl past and rain down. But it's not just the canal that's consumed by the seeds. The woodland turns into a magical kingdom, smothered in snow-white seed drifts. We wade through them as we walk Marley. At first we thought it must be dandelion seeds because they were everywhere, but it turned out to be something else. More on that in a minute. Dandelions start to bloom and show off their bright yellow flowers in the early spring, when pollinating insects begin to wake up. All kinds of bees, hoverflies, beetles and butterflies use dandelion nectar for food. But these clever little plants don't rely on pollinators. That's because they produce seeds without fertilisation, through a process called apomixis, as well as through their own deep tap roots.
Did you know that dandelion comes from the French Dandelion, which literally translates as lion's teeth? This year we've seen more dandelions than we've ever seen before, but we actually haven't been here for 20 years, we've been living abroad. So we asked our friend down in Devon, who's a bit of a naturalist, if he's seen more as well, and he has. So there are dandelions everywhere. Why? Why this year are there so many?
Each individual plant only flowers for a few days, but if they're in your area, you could see them blooming from March till late summer. Dandelion heads are actually individual florets that grow outwards from the centre, turning into a single round flower with which we're all familiar.
Once fertilised, it's time for them to grow their seeds, and they do this by closing the flower head, like this one here, and letting the seeds develop inside, and that can take anything from 9 to 12 days.
One plant can produce 10 flower heads, each formed from up to 200 florets. If you consider that each floret contains one seed, that means up to 2,000 seeds per plant. At this point, their stalks begin to zoom higher. This is so they can catch the breeze, where the seeds, which have turned into a kind of parachute, float away on the wind to land and start the process all over again. I don't know about you, but I still pick those beautiful dandelion clocks, as we used to call them, and blow them into the wind while making a wish. We realised there were far too many dunes and rivers of seeds gliding around the undergrowth in the woods for it to be just dandelions, so we did a little investigating.
And it turns out they're seeds from the woodland trees which line the Stainforth and Keadby Canal.
Most of England's trees produce catkins from winter till late spring. You may still see school children collecting them to study at this time of year.
The most common species are white willow, silver birch, hazel, oak and alder, and they have lovely names like kitten's tail, pussy willow and lamb's tail.
Male catkins fall away after releasing their pollen, while the females collect that pollen and release their seeds on the wind. It's the female white willow catkins, or lamb's tails, which contain gossamer-like seeds encased in a kind of fluffy white down, which are currently covering our woods and canals.
We always knew having access to towpaths would be perfect dog walking territory, but this area offers an abundance of spots for Marley to sniff out, from the raised banks above the canal to woodland full of nifts of rabbit, badger and deer.
Where are you going? Wait, come on. Good boy.
When we first got Marley, he was very friendly, but a little bit excitable. He was taking us for walks rather than us taking him for walks. But as you can see, he's a lot calmer now, and I'm happy to say that he walks at our pace rather than his. We're not quite ready to take him off the lead yet, but things are good and we're pretty pleased with his progress. In fact, Marley has been quick to learn. He sits and stays on command, so it hasn't taken him long to settle into our routine.
Okay, and go.
However, the no dogs on the bed rule lasted just a week before we folded. Happily, he has no problems with the engine or the boat moving, probably because he knows that the destination will reward him with new smells to sniff out.
You get across there. Look at those flowers.
He loves meeting other dogs and is generally well behaved around humans, although he's wary of loud teenagers on bikes. But then, who isn't? Marley is part of our little family and it feels like we've had him forever. Talking of which, this week he celebrates his 2nd birthday. Happy birthday, Marley.
There are oaks everywhere we look, all around us, right next to the boat, above the boat, and they're growing all the time. And here's a lovely look, beautiful sapling. I wonder how far it'll go. It could grow because there's nothing around it. So here, beautiful little sapling on its way to becoming an oak.
If the oak before the ash, then we'll only have a splash. If the ash before the oak, then we'll surely have have a soak. The thing is, I can't remember which did produce leaves first this year. So far, we've just had a splash, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
We can't talk about plant life here without mentioning England's national tree, the mighty royal oak.
It's a favourite tree for its strength all over the world and across the ages, with folkloric tales about it from the Romans, the Vikings and the Celts. To the Druids it's sacred and used for burning sacrifices. Did you know, by the way, that the name Druid translates to knower of the oak? But for most of us, the oak is important as the tree that in 1651 hid Charles II from the revolutionary Roundheads, and that's where it gained its royal moniker. Oak has been dear to sailors since people first took to the water in a boat. It produces one of the most durable timbers on the planet and has been used for thousands of years in the construction of equally important things like ships, flooring and wine barrels. This nature corridor, running along the canal next to farmland, is heavily populated with oak trees, from the tiniest sapling to avenues of more mature trees.
While doing a little bit of research into the oak, I discovered that it is extraordinary. It actually supports more wildlife than any other plant or tree in the country. It supports 2,300 species in its trunk, underneath it, in its roots, on the leaves, on the fruits, all over the tree. It's supporting some kind of life, and that can be anything from mammals to birds to insects to lichens to fungi, you name it, the oak is supporting it.
One of those is the gall wasp, which lays its egg inside a leaf bud. The larvae then begin the process of forming a gall from the tree's wood to protect themselves from predators. We know these galls as oak apples. Definitely not edible, but also harmless to the tree.
In summer, the wasps emerge from the oak apples and the apples fall to the ground. And it seems that around here, on some trees, there are a lot more apples than there are on others. Does anybody know why that should be?
What a miraculous tree, and we're surrounded by them right next to our boat.
This is an area that's full of footpaths through various woodlands, with the majority of which are actually oak. We've moored up right next to a whole load of oak trees, and we're now going to walk into a kind of swampy area with silver birch and many other types of trees. So this is my first outing with the Tamron. This is it. It's an absolute beast. And I think this has been superseded by the 150 to 600, but very kind of Petru to send this to me on loan and to give it a shot. Now, the main thing I'm interested in, of course, is bird photography. I'm finding you need a lot of patience with bird photography. You've got to be in the right place at the right time. You can hear we are surrounded by birdsong, but as the leaves begin to cover themselves in green leaves, they get more and more difficult to spot. So the other thing that I'm focusing on, excuse the pun, is of course nature photography. And with this whacking great big lens, it's very good at isolating the subject from the background. With this dappled light, we're getting some lovely effects of the various trees, plants, acorn apples, bluebells. Soldier's buttons is one we've learned today. I think Liz will be able to tell you a little bit more about the nature that we are surrounded by.
The canal here is next to farmland, punctuated by two dominant crops. The distinctive lilac Phacelia is used to suppress weeds, absorb excess nitrogen and calcium, and can be used as manure. This is known as a cover crop, sown during the idle periods between cereal crops. Meanwhile, the beautiful red clover is used for silage, fed to cattle, sheep and other ruminants, which may explain why we've been seeing deer in these fields. It's also popular in traditional medicine to ease symptoms like hot flushes, night sweats, osteoporosis, arthritis, and skin and hair disorders. Women of a certain age may benefit from its properties. Irrespective of its use, the flowers create a stunning red carpet by the side of the canals and have been known to attract dogs, with our sincerest apologies to the farmer. There are many other species of flora in these fields, but they are not exclusive to the meadows, often spilling over into the towpath. In May, there's an abundance of delicate little flowers no bigger than your fingertip.
One of those tiny flowers always reminds me of my mum, because when we were very small, my brother and I used to be taken on digs every year by my father, who's an archaeologist, down in Sussex, and we would stay in Speedwell Manor. I had no idea what either of those words meant until one day when we were in a field, Mum started eulogising about this tiny, weeny blue flower, and she told me it was called Speedwell. And now I know what Speedwell is, and every time I see one it takes me back to that moment.
You may be familiar with spike speedwell, but the variety found here is creeping and also has a raft of medicinal benefits. Another small but abundant flower is Stitchwort, both lesser and greater. This simple white flower has sparked several superstitions. Known as soldiers' buttons in olden times because it looked like the buttons on soldiers' tunics, it was also regarded as a thunder plant because picking stitchwort was thought to induce thunder. One of its common names, adder's meat, came about because it was thought to invite adder bites, and if that isn't enough, you run the risk of being led astray by elves or fairies if you pick it. Of course, the great thing about all the flora around the canals and waterways is that it attracts insects. We've seen and heard plenty of wildlife while we've been here, with rabbits and squirrels frequently crossing our paths. Ducks, moorhens and swans patrol the water, sometimes with offspring, and in the skies we've seen buzzards, bats and kites.
The water, despite being covered in seeds, or maybe it's because it's covered in seeds, sends out ripples across the surface as aquatic animals jump up to grab what's ever available. And the other thing that's amazing around here is the song thrush, which hasn't stopped, singing right through the evening, right until it's dark.
One early morning, I saw a deer walking along the towpath. Just as I decided it must be a fallow deer, I saw another one swim past the boat. It was stuck in the canal.
Liz just spotted a deer in the water. The difference is this one's alive. Looks like a baby deer. She first saw the mother deer standing by the edge. In fact, is that her there? And anyway, we've brought the passerelle down, trying to dip it in the water, but of course our presence is scaring the deer. So Liz has walked up to see if she can round it up to come back down this way. It's the least we can do, but of course there's nowhere for the deer to get out. These walls are pretty steep, so it's really sad. So this is the winding hole, and it's a little extra part of the canal, and we did just see him stand. He was definitely standing on the bank. Whether he can get out or not, I'm not sure, but at least he's found somewhere to rest, if nothing else.
After the rustling stopped, it didn't reappear, so we've decided it found a way out of the canal. And even if it was on the wrong side, at least it lived to tell the tale.